Good evening. Welcome to Branco Broadcast. My name is Bob Branco, and we're very pleased this evening to have with us Darryl Breffe. He's the owner of a very prominent internet radio station on Cape Cod. He's going to talk to us all about it, and he may bring up some other topics as well. Darryl, the floor is yours. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you very much for this opportunity. I'm going to first start off talking about what was it like when we were young kids. We often heard our parents turn on the radio, the big stereo or the kitchen radio, and we wondered within ourselves, who's that man in the radio? There's a man talking in that radio. And we had no concept of what it took for that man to talk through that radio. I know one time in school one year, one girl was asked, what do you listen to? She says, I hear a man in the radio. And most people, and this starts off because I guess it's ignorance, it's because of not knowing. We all tend to think, well, there's something mystical, something very different to hear a person's voice out of a radio. Hence, the concept or the expression that has been bandied about in the radio industry that radio is the mouthpiece. Why? Because people use radio to get a point across. What did it take to get that point across? Well, let's see how we can best describe this. In most situations, you have, when it started back in 1929, we had KDKA out in, I think it was originally, now that was Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I think it was one other station that started out in California, which was KCBS. And what they had was, yes, a broadcast studio. They used for a transmitter, believe it or not, it was a tube with metal filings. And what they did was they shook the tube up and down, and the filings would vibrate as audio would go through the tube. Now, what they had to receive the signal was nothing more than your old traditional crystal set. Now, this was a crystal with an antenna coil, a coil of wire, a long wire for the antenna, headphones, and in some cases, they had what they call a variable tuner or capacitor. And as you turn the dial, it would tune in whatever local stations were nearby. But the problem with that particular setup was it was very limited. Very limited. Yes, you could hear the people speaking in the headphones around in the 40s. I would say maybe I would go a little bit further back. Sometime in the 30s, they developed what is called the All-American 5-tube radio. And I could tell you what tubes they used in them. Now, I'm 65 years old. I've got a good background in electronics. But needless to say, the radios back then, the speakers they used were electromagnetic speakers. Plain words, the magnet in the speaker was produced, the magnetic field was produced by an electrical coil. And there was 5 tubes in the radio. And what they did, and they're still doing this today, but they solid state, and of course there's chips, and they'd come up with all sorts of different methods and things of broadcasting and receiving the signals. They had 2 amplifiers. They had what they call actually 3 stages. You had your antenna stage, you had your intermediate stage, and you had your audio stage. And the way they designed it is that the antenna stage the tuner tuned to the wavelength of if you were at 880 on the dial, that's where you tuned to. Then they had what was called an intermediate frequency amplifier, where they had an RF oscillator, which was part of what they call the front end of the receiver. Now, the front end, the difference between the radio, the RF oscillator, and the antenna wave was 455 kilohertz. So you had what is called a 3-section tuner, or 2-section tuner, and the difference between that was 455. So as you turn the tuner dial, you maintain the same response throughout the band. So it was anywhere from 540 up to 1600. In some cases, it was a little bit further. It didn't matter. The FCC allowed a little bit outside of that because it was just the way the radios were designed. So now you have what you call a detector. And inside the radio, the detector took the audio from the intermediate stage and then amplified it through a volume control and another tube or a couple of tubes. And this way you were able to hear the signal. Now, the transmitters, they've gone from this one little shake tube to big tubes, some of them with transmitters that put out, I would say, over 100,000 watts. The tubes themselves, each tube is like as big as a car, and the tube is in water to keep it cool. They run water around the tube to keep it warm. That's the big shortwave stations are like this. Now the 50,000 watt stations and below, they're like a big refrigerator. Like a big refrigerator, and they have tubes. They have what is called capacitors. They're big barrel capacitors down the bottom of the transmitter. They have what is called a dead man stick that the engineer uses. He shuts down the transmitter. If he has to work on it, he uses the dead man stick to short the filters out so that he doesn't get zapped, because he can literally have his hand blown off from the power of the transmission. So this is what radio is all about. Nowadays, they've gone to solid-state transmitters using less power, and they use what is called phase lock tuning. It's a lot more efficient, all right, and it stays on frequency much better. So what goes on inside the station? Let's look at not the transmitter itself. Let's look at what people do in the radio station. Well, we have sales department. What do? They sell radio time. And what they do is everything is under what is called contracts. So a contract is signed up. I'm sorry, folks. I had to stop there for a second. I just heard a dog went nuts here in the house. The contracts show the date, the time when the commercials to go on, and it could even be a ministry or a show. And what the person that's going on the air, he's got two choices. Well, the radio station can put him on for nothing, and they have to sell commercial spots in order to pay for that radio time. Now, what else goes on? You have an engineer or someone or the disc jockey, and in lots of cases, you have the disc jockey has to do what is called combo. Well, what he does, he runs all the equipment just like I do. I sit here in front of a mixing console. I have a computer with a keyboard, and then I tell the computer what songs to play, what programs to play. If it's pre-recorded, we bring up the programs. All right. Now, also, there's a chief engineer. Well, the chief engineer, what he does is that Anything that's over 10,000 watts, the FCC says, he must be employed full time. So he's there to watch the transmitter. Do you notice that every hour or thereabouts, they have what is called a station ID. They call it a legal ID. It says, this is WABC New York, 77 on your AM dial. They have to do this. This is legal. It has to be done. I knew of one station that wasn't doing it, and I reported them, and they finally changed their attitude kind of quickly, from what I gather. And so the chief engineer, he's there to maintain not only the transmitter, but he's also there to, let's say, if the mixing console goes awry, he has to be there to open it up, fix it while the programs are running, or what they do is they have a backup console, and we're going to get into that one too, because we're planning on building a production studio and a main studio here at Seajoy, where if something goes wrong on the main console, we can go to our backup console and still run the radio station. Now, then you have accountants who keep track of what money's coming in, what money is going out. You have a general manager. You have a program director that makes sure that the right kind of programming goes on the air so that they get the optimum amount of listening audience, because it's geared what they call cost per listener. And that's basically a nutshell. I've been doing this now, the broadcasting side, streaming, even though it doesn't go to a transmitter. We are going to put up a transmitter soon. We have been streaming now for 11 years, and we have now over 30 clients that purchase radio time under contract. I run it as a regular radio station, and we have a nice listening audience, including over 100 countries around the world. Now, you can, of course, ask me questions. We'll be more than happy to answer them. I do want to also let you know I'm also an ordained minister, and I do counseling. We don't charge for that. You call in here anytime you want to the radio station. I'd be more than happy to talk to you. This is what we do here, and I enjoy the work. Now, if you have any questions, feel free to ask, and I'm going to put this back over to Bob, because I'm pretty sure he may have some comments.
I have a question. This is Jay.
All right, Jay, you go right ahead.
Thank you, Bob. You mentioned, obviously, you went of a detail building of a radio station, which is the old-fashioned way. That's how it was done. Now, in these days, based on computers, and you can basically do this by having a couple of computers around. And I know you are streaming live, I understand, in the past 10-some years. I'd like to know, how much does it cost live streaming, if you buy airtime from the Internet, some broadcasters to do live stream? How much does it cost to do that?
That varies from company to company. Now, the company I work with, they sort of gave me a break. They're very nice. It works on how many listeners you have. Now, the interesting thing, I'm going to be honest with you, even though I'm paying for 20 listeners, what's interesting about this, the Facebook listeners don't show up as part of the count. Neither does the count for the listeners in different parts of the world. It's an interesting one. But yet, we are broadcasting around the world. We're here in the United States and around the world. The cost, it can vary. I would say on an average, for like 50 listeners is like $99 for the month, or $120 for the month. But you got to realize it all depends on what the companies want. I'm on I'm with a company that streams with the big boys. Plain words, they're big radio stations. I'm on with them. So, you can go to christiannetcast.net or .com and you can find our radio station up there. We're along with other radio stations. So it is a big, go ahead. I'm sorry, Bob.
I was going to ask you a question. You said that you pay for 20 listeners, yet you have the potential for thousands. Well, how does that work if you only pay for 20?
All right. If they go on through my website, it comes up as 20. But through Facebook and other social services like Twitter and whatnot, whoever puts the links up for, what do they call that now? TuneIn Radio, Tunes, some of that doesn't even show up as listener count. Don't ask me why. Because we know that there's listeners because the people that we have on, let's say, for example, 5 o'clock on Sunday afternoon, 7 o'clock on Sunday evening, they're getting emails back from the listeners from all different areas. It's an interesting fact. And I wonder myself, how are they listening and I never see the count? It's just, I don't understand it. I think even the guy at the streaming company can't quite figure it out either.
I have a question.
I have a follow-up question.
Steve and Jay. Go ahead, Steve.
I was just going to say, Darryl, I'm assuming you were in ham radio because you were very articulate about the radio terminology. Have you done ham radio in the past?
Yes, I am licensed. In fact, I've had at least 3 licenses from the FCC. I had a commercial radio telephone license endorsement for blind people, which was a joke because they stopped it in 1995. Plain words, that license was designed so that blind people could work at a radio station or anybody with that endorsement license. It was a means of making money for the federal government. Might as well be honest with you.
Yeah.
And they stopped it because I guess it was more paperwork than what it was worth. And, okay, I was wondering what there was. I thought for a second we got dumped. So what it allowed was that the FCC deregulated commercial industry. And what they said was, well, if anyone wanted to work at the radio station, turn on the transmitter, turn it off, handle login chores and whatnot, they had to have a separate license. So the radio station said, okay, we'll go along with it. So the management says that you have to have your endorsement license. So what I do, I went and took the test. I think it was like 75 questions and you had to know about towers. You had to know how to do the indirect and direct method of establishing how much power or radiated power was coming out of the tower. Oh, there was lots of different information that you had to know in order to have that license.
Yeah.
Amateur radio, I would say a good 90% of the theory you can apply to regular commercial radio.
Sure.
It's an interesting one. The frequencies are different, yes, but the concepts are there.
Right.
I have a CB license, which you don't no longer need. It's open season on CB. And, but that's where I'm at now. I have just the FCC license for amateur radio. And my calls, by the way, are KB1EXZ.
All right.
All right, Jay, you're next.
Okay. This is very fascinating. Obviously, you are very knowledgeable when it comes to detail. You mentioned that the live streaming that you're doing about $100, and how much bandwidth is involved in that? Because I know they go with the bandwidth. Higher bandwidth you have, obviously, clear signal you get on the internet. And the second
I've done it with DXL, believe it or not. But the problem is when you start talking narrow bandwidth, the broader the bandwidth, the better the quality, the better the quality of signal. Can't get my words out right. And in anywhere you go, all right, I'm going to be honest with you. You pay for what you get.
That's true.
All right? You could pay $100 and still have nothing. But you can go to certain companies, and if you know how to work with them and they work with you, you can get things a lot cheaper.
Right.
Now, that's not to say it. I'm sorry. Let me just finish the statement here.
Please. Okay.
It's not to say that it only costs me $100 a month. I have telephone bills. I've got the internet bill to pay every month because I have to pay the cable company. Otherwise, I cannot go on and stream onto what is called. Just let me think of the word.
That's exactly my question was. That's other than your internet service, because I know you're going to need very high-speed internet in order to put the show with the live streaming, correct?
It cost me, I would say roughly $800 a month to do this operation. It cost me well over, and right now we're getting ready to build our second studio. It's cost me already over or close to $11,000 and counting. Why?
Wow.
It's not just the computer. You got to realize there's mixer, and we buy quality equipment here. We cannot have, and what we're looking to do right now, the second studio is going to be a backup studio, and we're going to show it off as a model to potential people so that they will bring us clients. The clients will have to pay at least $50 per training, and they'll get a course. They'll learn as they go, and then we'll place them as internship here. So there'll be 2 studios, and there'll be we're going to have at least 3 phones in here. To run a proper radio station, you have to have at least 3 or 4 computers. Years ago, it was big reel-to-reel tape decks, cart machines, turntables, huge stuff, and there was a lot of money involved. You can get away sort of dirt cheap, but it's still you have to have quality.
Sure. Now, where is your studio located? What town are you?
We are in Hyannis, Massachusetts.
Oh, wow.
And what's your call letter on the internet? So if people.
Oh, we're still C-Joy Internet Radio. We are going to use, and this is one of the laws that we had to learn before when we got our endorsement license. We can put up a small broadcast transmitter up to 100 milliwatts input. I have one here. And we can use any call letters we want as long as they don't sound similar or the same as any other call letters here in the local area.
Uh-huh.
And we're going to go up to like 1690, 1700 on the dial. And that's still within the expanded AM band.
I have a question for you, 2 questions.
Yeah.
Number 1, where did you get your start in radio? And what do you think of, there are so many Christian radio stations and groups out there like Caleb, Bible Broadcasting Network, and what kind of music do you like personally? Do you just listen to Christian music, and where did you get your start in radio?
Okay. Most of the time here, it's gospel, black and white gospel, contemporary hymns, whatnot. And then that's intermixed with different ministries. We do have one lady that comes on Saturdays and Sundays, and she interviews jazz artists, and we play their music and whatnot. So there is a nice mix, but we're generally a gospel music and teaching station. Now, you did ask another question, and right now, it just escaped my memory. What was that question?
Where did you get your start in radio, and how do you feel about like Bible Broadcasting Network, Caleb, and the other stations like Family Radio? Hello? Uh-oh.
from
Oh, that sucks.
Hello?
I hear you, but I think we lost the guest.
I do too.
Yeah. Maybe, Mike, you asked a very technical question. You shouldn't misunderstood. No, he'll come back. Maybe he got another call as his broadcast continues.
Wow.
Well,
Oh, my God.
I wonder what happened.
Yeah.
Bob, are you here?
ooh. Bob?
Mike, this is Rob Robbins. I was listening. It's very interesting. Thanks for the invite to listen. I found it very
Hey, Rob, we have other people here that are into broadcasting. I think, but
Darryl, are you still there? Darryl, are you still there?
Uh-oh.
I think we all got bumped off the line for whatever reason.
No, we're here.
You got bumped? Bob?
Yeah, I got bumped. Darryl?
So does that mean the recording was bumped too, or?
Find out. Let me find out. I'm going to have to find out.
Okay.
oh my gosh. A friend of mine has just come in who owns a radio station in the South Florida area called Caleb. I mean, not Caleb, the Cord, 91.9 and many other radio stations. He has like 9 stations involved.
9, wow.
Wow.
It's a lot of
yeah,
stations.
Mike is one of our first listeners.
That's
from
group radio.
And in 1973, I told the Lord, whatever I learned in radio, I'll give it back to him. And that's why C Joy Internet Radio is where it is today. And
The
what
host
it's
has
doing.
joined the conference.
Oops, something happened there. Okay.
Cheryl, we
And,
live up here.
Where did you get
Okay.
Darryl,
My
go ahead.
start in radio, go ahead, I understand. My start in radio was actually WTHE in Mineola, New York, and that was 1975 or 1976. And I was doing a pre-recorded program called, oh boy, it was something America. I can't remember the name of it. And we used to do Long Island Sound Off, and then I developed my own program out of that. And then later on, the engineer, the chief engineer, he let me run the board, and there was another blind person working there at that time. His name was Mike Pusar. I don't know whatever happened to him. I haven't heard of him anymore. He left the station. He left the station many, many years ago, around probably 1977 or whatever. And from there, I built my own studios and was recording for different churches and whatnot. And then when I came up here to Hyannis, I brought my one studio up here. And January 5th, 2005, January 5th, we started C-Joy Internet Radio. And from there we grew, and that's where we are today.
Wow.
Any other questions for Darryl?
What about your advertising? Do you have policies, because you're a Christian station, about certain types of ads you wouldn't put on? And
Okay, well, this goes for ads as well as ministries. We do not allow for adult content. That's number one.
Mm-hmm.
I find that adult content, well, hey, look no further than your own bedroom if you're married, okay? I don't know who's doing that, but that's all right. Look no further than your own bedroom if you're married. It doesn't have to go any further. Number two, we tell our audience, our broadcasters, you cannot use certain words on the air. We don't say what words. First offense, we send you a letter. Second offense, we take you off the air, and then if you have paid us any money, we will not return you any money. We also have a thing built into the contract. If the FCC catches us doing something wrong, and it's the wrongness of the client, and we are taken to court, the client has to pay any costs. So what we do, we virtually have cut out all the nonsense that other radio stations have. Other radio stations, they could say A word, they could say the B word, they could say the F word, but you know what? That doesn't make you any bigger. All that does is make you look stupid.
That's right.
It makes you look ignorant.
Right.
It's not good talk. It's cheap talk, and it doesn't really excite anybody.
Mm-hmm.
I think the politicians are really, they use the media to lower themselves, and then the people, they love gobbling up all that kind of stuff. But I at Sea Joy Internet Radio, we won't do that. We want people to be real. That's the deal.
Wasn't the FCC a lot tougher in the past on those kind of things that they get away with now?
Well, what happened, I'll give you a little story, and this was true. There was a station in New York, WBAI 99.5.
Oh, yeah.
And every now and then there was a word said that shouldn't have been said. Well, the FCC came down and fined them. And they were not for profit. And I knew one other station, they were a college station, and I knew the general manager, he said something no on the air. The FCC came down and yanked their license, and they never got their license since, as far as I know.
Well, BAI is still on. It's broadcasting.
It's still broadcasting, and the interesting thing, now the FCC has sort of relaxed the rules.
Yeah.
Hey, you can go on and cuss all you want, but make sure it's on after 11 at night. But Phil, Dr. Phil, and others, they're sort of pushing the envelope. They'll say A, they'll say B, they'll say they'll blank out the F word.
Yeah.
Okay, but they are pushing the envelope.
But Darryl, there was I was reading a FCC rule for many years ago on a regular radio or TV, that what we know on the regular. But as soon as they went on cable, and everything obviously paid cable and all that stuff, and that old story that when George Collins came up with that you cannot do 7 on radio. And
let me explain to you what went down. Let me explain to you what went down.
Okay.
Reason why cable and other entities can get away with that, very simple. They are considered private. They are not a public. Now, here's the interesting thing. They're public because of stock ownership, but yet the FCC considers them private. So therefore, they can get on in the middle of the day, cuss left and right, and nobody can say a thing. There was one time, and this really happened, and I complained to the cable company. There was this wrestling match on at 8 o'clock Monday night, and the language and the filth that came out of their mouths, Comcast. And I called up Comcast, and I said, listen, how are you going to teach children not to swear and cuss if you're going to put programs on where they can watch at 8 o'clock at night and the people are cussing and swearing? Do you know that stopped very quickly?
We have a bunch of pirate stations in the Miami area, and pirate stations, they cuss like crazy. They use cuss words and they say the N-word and all kinds of stuff and play a lot of violent music.
And I presume they're on FM or the AM at the expanded dial?
They're on FM.
Wow, I'm surprised the FCC don't go after them. I'm really surprised. They don't have the funds to send anybody out. That's a good one.
You know, Darryl, I think the FCC has softened up. That's my own personal opinion. You listen to some of these modern music stations, the music that they allow on the air is so vulgar that I want to throw up sometimes. And then you mentioned about the kids. You know, but music is such a business that no one wants to censor anything anymore because the kids like this fake, false heroism.
Well, they still have that wrestling on too.
Example of something that's been well misinterpreted. And I'm not going to say the actual word, but I'm going to spell it out. And I'll give you a couple, and I'll give you their meanings. The first one is the F word. Yeah. Now, everybody uses that with the ing on the end or in on the end, and it's say, shut the blank up, whatever the case, all right? Now, but what does that word mean? Well, first off, it came out of England. Fornication under consent of the king. So when you say that, who is your king? I've heard Christians say that. Who is your king?
Wow.
Yeah.
Is your king, so if you say, Jesus is my king, are you trying to tell me that Jesus condones and consents to fornication? See, that's how ignorant people are. Okay? The other word, S-H-I-T. You want to know where it came from? It's not what everybody thinks. Back in the 1700s or 1800s, they used to transport cow manure on the ships, and they put it down in the bottom of the ship. Well, here's what was happening. They closed up the ship, and the ship was exploding from the gas from the cow manure. What did they learn? Take the excrement and put it in barrels, whatever the case, where they could breathe on top of the deck, on deck. And that's where the phrase came, ship high in transit. So you spell it the way it is, S-H-I-T. So people take it and use it as a dirty word.
Wow.
Everything has been reconcocted to suit people's tastes.
Yeah.
But as you said, Darryl, you don't like it when Comcast allows the words on the air. I don't like a lot of that either. So we have accepted the evolution of these words as bad words. We've accepted it.
Right. Unfortunately, because we are the minority, the majority rules. I know it sounds ridiculous, but in this day and time, and even as the Bible says, with each generation is wiser and more wicked. So you figure if your parents didn't teach you not to swear and cuss, you're going to be brought up and you're going to do it, and then what happens is you won't go to church, and then your kids are going to do the same thing, cuss and swear and not go to church, and it keeps going down the line from generation to generation.
But Darryl, there was a ruling on this. I don't know whether you probably know it. You know, when Howard Stern was on WABC radio, they used to pay $250,000 fine every time you obviously used those words.
It was more than that.
Right, but when he went on XM radio, and he uses all the time, and the court ruling was they don't have to pay anything because they said, listen, after all, the consumer, which is listener, pays to listen. All they have to do is stop their payment. So they don't have to. So
and the reason why they pay, it's a private entity. Exactly. This is the difference. When it's a public entity such as WABC and the listener doesn't pay for it, a lot of listeners don't have to listen to that vulgarity that comes across from Howard Stern. And Howard Stern, he could care less.
Wow.
Right.
The stations would pay the bill, and you know what? They get that back within a week's time.
Exactly.
Because he moved dollars. That's why.
Right.
What kind of music did you grow up listening to? Do you like old rock and roll?
I enjoyed the old rock and roll from about 1955 on up. I have here a complete history of rock and roll from actually it's a little bit less than 1955, all the way up through 1978, complete with the stories and all.
Oh, yeah, the one that was done by, from California with, Bill Drake.
I can't remember the man's name.
Yeah.
But I have it here. And, you know, it was more civilized back then, although the idea of the term rock and roll, that wasn't just a thing that was pulled out of the air. That term rock and roll came because Alan Freed coined that term because of people in the bed, couples in the bed. That's where that came from. Again, it's one of them situations where people do not know what they're saying when they say, well, I love rock and roll. The original phrase came from the way it is.
Right.
I don't know if I'm on mute or off mute.
No, you aren't. You're not. You're off mute.
Okay, I have a question. About your station. You started, let's say, 11 years ago. And so do you feature different artists? Would you feature an unknown artist? I'm a singer, and I don't
If you send me the MP3s, we'll play them. What is it? Is it gospel?
Well, I actually, you know what? I have one tape. It's a country western, but I have a couple gospel songs on it. If I can find the tapes, it's a cassette. I really don't have any CDs. I've never made one because actually my ministry has kind of slowed down, and I'm trying to pick up again. And I don't know whether I'll ever, make a CD if I got, some good songwriter. But if I ever did, and I knew I had real outlets for them, then I would go for it. But I have to wait and see how that's going to work. But
I can possibly help you get the connections you need to get something like that going.
What do you mean?
Well, everything from a producer to recording studio to the finished product. Mm-hmm. I might be able to, if you could find your cassettes and send me one. I still have a cassette deck up here, which we can then copy down to the hard drive, and then we can possibly make a CD and send it back to you, and then we can help you to market the product.
Yeah, well, you know what? I'm just, before I even make any moves, I'm really praying about everything, and I'm not sure just, what I'm going to do. The first thing I'm going to do is get some music online. I'm working on doing that. This is the next thing. And then I'm just going to see. I'm taking it step by step. But do you ever have anybody sing live?
We have most of our people are live here, except it's a recorded program, which if they can't show up, everything's spare.
Would I be able to sing, like, say, if you say we're interviewing someone over the phone, and say I had a soundtrack, and I put my soundtrack on, and I could just sing with that, could that be, I don't know how well that would be, acceptable as far as the sound-wise is concerned, or whether I could do something like that.
I could accept it. We'll just have to find a place for you.
I'd like to, come on and sing live sometime. I mean, would I be able to call in and do that? That's the first thing that I would want you to hear, and I have some really nice soundtracks. So I'm just, trying to explore every possibility, and I'm just wondering if that...
I have a gentleman that does a program called This and That. I don't know if you know Paul Smith.
Yeah, he's on the Interactive Christian Community.
Right, and he's also on with us.
Okay.
Now, if you don't have
a Maryland, right?
That's right. That's him.
Yeah, I know who he is.
Right.
I can possibly hook you up with him.
Yeah, I know who he is, and I know how to get in contact with him.
Right. See whether he'll let you sing on this program.
Right. Can I just ask you, how big is your listening audience when you...
I don't really know. All I know is that we reach well over 100 countries. That's all I know.
Wow.
We reach quite a few, thousands.
Oh, God, that could certainly be used. But I mean, maybe I ought to talk to you about that on a more private basis, and I could maybe call you and I could talk to you and just then pray about it and just take my steps slowly. But I'm just
okay. I can give you our phone number here.
Sure.
And Bob will also have it.
Okay.
508-957-3530, and you press the 0 key for the office.
Would you mind emailing that to me?
You know what, Bob? I think it'd be better if you do, because right now I can't put down any email address. I don't want to disturb the computer.
Bob could do that. That's fine.
So let me.
Ma'am, I don't know who you are. You'll have to give me your email address.
Yeah, it's sunshinepa@verizon.net.
You're familiar. I've heard that email.
I was on your program too. Yeah.
Sunshine.
What's your name?
Carol Sexton.
Carol Sexton.
Oh,
I already got you in my address book.
Yes, you do. Mm-hmm. Okay, I didn't mean to monopolize this, and I didn't mean to...
No.
It's all right. It's as much your program as it is everyone else's.
Well, good luck with that.
So, Darryl, can you repeat that number again? 508-957-3530?
Right, and you press 0 for the office.
0. Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Yeah, we have a menu here with all different extension hookup. We have a contest. If you can get a free meal on us if you can answer the Bible question. I'm not going to tell you what it is. We have a magazine for children. Can you just hold on a second?
Okay.
All right.
I don't believe
You're listening to Branco Broadcast with Minister Darryl Breffe of Joy Internet Radio. Please give him a call at area code 508-957-3530. Are you back, Darryl?
Hold on, please.
Well, the program is...
Internet radio.
Darryl, are you back yet?
Yeah, I'm back. The guy's hung up. I don't know what happened. I'll have to find out.
They
hung.
Ordained minister.
Hang up. Bob, keep it going. I got to fix this.
Once again, it's area code 508-957-3530 if you wish to contact Joy Internet Radio.
Bob, Darryl is an ordained minister?
Yes, he is.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep, he is. In fact, we refer to him as Pastor Darryl Breffe.
Okay.
Oh, Pastor. And did he go to Perkins?
No, he did not.
He went to the Bell School.
With that.
Bob. Darryl. Excuse me.
Where's the Bell School?
The Lavelle School. It's in New York.
Oh, LaBelle. Oh, yeah.
Oh, it's in New York.
I believe so. Darryl, are you back?
Hold on, Bob.
Why don't we wrap up? It sounds to me like Darryl is very busy. I would like
I'm right here.
Oh, you're back?
I'm right here. Yeah,
right,
something happened.
More questions for Darryl. Go right ahead. Anybody want to ask him something? Go right ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to know it said something about you had employment opportunities, and I'm thinking of
yes, down the road, what we're looking at is once I get this other studio hooked up and get some trainees in here that are disabled, we're looking to train them and do internships and as well as put money in their pocket for running the station.
Wow.
We're looking at.
Oh. Now, where's your station located? I mean, what?
In Hyannis, Massachusetts.
Hyannis, Massachusetts.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Kind of far from Sunshine, PA, isn't it?
Yeah, a little bit. Far, I must admit.
Darryl, are you familiar with the fact? How do you feel about? Are you familiar with that? CBS Radio wants to sell all of their radio stations, and where do you see radio in the next, let's say, 10 to 15 years? Terrestrial radio.
Terrestrial radio I'm going to be very honest with you, is very expensive. One, it's the electric bills. Two, maintenance, because of FCC laws and because of having a chief engineer on duty for the big stations. We're talking big bucks. On top of that, let's give you an idea of what we're dealing with. A radio contract, 15 minutes on a 50,000 watt radio station is over $400 per broadcast.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous, but this is the way it is. It's big bucks in order to maintain a budget. Now, here at Seajoy, we do $50 a month for an hour, or each week, and there's 5 hours per month, depending on fifth week is inclusive. We have a half hour, is 45, I believe, and 15 minutes, which is $40, or you get a whole contract for a year, you pay up front $250, and believe it or not, that's cheap. That works out to like $18 per month compared to $50.
Mm-hmm.
So there are, this is how sales work.
Yeah. Are you familiar with the fact that CBS may be selling all of their radio stations?
No, but if they're selling all their radio stations, they must have something up their sleeve. I don't know what it is, but that's big bucks unless their stations are not moving dollars. Because generally, if they're moving dollars, they're not going to just let it go like that unless they see something bigger.
Yeah. Yeah, Leslie Moons wants to sell all of his stations maybe outright or something like that. It would be kind of sad because I grew up listening to CBS radio.
Mm-hmm. I did too. I had the AM. I listened to CBS FM before it became Jack FM, whatever that was.
Oh, yeah.
But, I had my years of listening. I enjoyed the AM with the old opera stories and whatnot. Arthur Godfrey. I got loads of Arthur Godfrey here, by the way.
Oh, really?
Wow.
Yeah, I've got old-time radio, old-time television.
Oh, really?
We are loaded with material here.
Sounds good.
Did you tape them on reels or?
No. Somebody or a number of people were very nice to upload them.
Oh, I see.
Technically, they weren't supposed to do it, but I was able to get my hands on the series.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, we're getting on to that magic hour, and Darryl, you probably have another program to log in. Am I correct?
Nope. I do have to do this. If you just hold on 1 second.
Okay, because we're going to wrap up in about 2 minutes.
Okay.
So why don't I take this time to thank you, Darryl, for sharing your knowledge and good wisdom with us about radio and how it evolved and what you're doing with it. And I know all about your station. I've known about it for a couple of decades now. It used to be based